weak to the flesh any longer. And because when you're only going by the words of the law, or the actions of the law, and you're trying to do it on your own, and you're not doing it empowered with the Spirit of God, then it can't accomplish it. Many people talk about, well, if you do good, and you're doing good, then and you're a good person, and you follow all these laws, strict to the letter, then you'll be saved, and you're going, you're gonna be okay. You'll be okay. That's how they put it. No, no, we don't get to heaven. We don't receive salvation by our own works, because if that were the case, then we would be able to accomplish it all by ourselves, right? We should be able to adhere to every law, every commandment, every possible moray and statute. We should have no problem with it. But we know that's not true. If, in fact, you have probably, as I have through my life at some point, tried to, live by that letter and find out that you fail because you still have some sin nature. You still have the flesh to contend with. You still have, temptations. And again, remember, Satan is out there busier than ever, right? So we can't do it of our own selves. But when we're doing it with the power of the Holy Spirit, we are now empowered, and therefore we're no longer weak. And that's what verse 3 is speaking to. God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, likeness, not the sinful flesh, likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemns sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Remembering, we just said a few moments ago, the more you're walking with the Spirit of God, you will find that those other behaviors, those old behaviors, become less and less appealing to you. So you become less and less fleshly, less and less worldly, less and less carnal in nature. And then it goes on to say that, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. And here again, this is not rocket science. It's just not. What is carnal? What is carnal? It's really talking about those things that will fade away, those things that are not eternal. Carnal being all those things really that are associated with what the world, what society deems important, and deems to be of value. Cars, money, success, your titles, your work, how many toys you have, whether you're grown up toys or a child's toys, right? That's all the carnal stuff. And you can remember even yourself when you were a child. You get that brand new toy or whatever it is, and in 3 days it's no longer any value to you. You can see that perhaps in your own children, and you can probably see it even in your adult self, right? You get that new laptop, the new cell phone or whatever, and oh, it's bang whiz, everything's great, and then within 3 weeks, it's yeah, that old thing, or those shoes that you just had to have, that purse you just had to have, and then you find yourself one day just tossing it over in the corner with all the other purses that you had to have, right? You know what I'm talking about. Carnal minded. The things of the world in terms of, well, going back to profanity and alcoholism and drug use and sexual immorality, all of those things. And all of those things fade away. They all fade away. But if you're spiritually minded, then you have life. And notice the comparison. Carnal is death, because doesn't it? I mean, it fades away, it dies out. And in fact, too much of it brings death to you. Because when you're focused on things that are immaterial, when you're focused on things that fade away, when you focus on things that are not real, or don't have any salvation value, they drag you down. You become more, if you're carnal minded and materialistic, right? Because materialism is involved in that. You are materialism. It blurs. It blurs what your purpose is. If you're constantly thinking about the next new thing you need to buy, or the next new this, or the next pair of shoes, the next dress, the next hat, all the all the stuff, that takes away from your relationship with God, because now those things become idols. All that stuff displaces, puts out, and remember, anything that is put in place of God is an antichrist spirit. That's why idolatry is so detrimental. Materialism, it clouds our minds. We're talking about this carnal mindedness. That's why do you think the scripture says carnal minded? Right? Because it really is a mindset with folks. When you really put your mind to it, do you need to have that other new car? When you put your mind to it, I mean, when you really sit down and think about it clearly, do you need another new iPhone? Right? I mean, with reality, with thinking about it. That coveting, my neighbor's got one, so I've got to get one. My sister got one, so I got to get one. When you're putting those things ahead of, because the more you put and if you don't think you have been putting those things ahead of God, just ask yourself how much money you could be saving if you didn't get those things. If you're, look at how much of your life's power and energy is put toward getting things. Many people right now are working, if they're blessed to work, maybe they're working some people, in fact, years ago, I worked 3 jobs. I was trying to help my spouse get through school. But we, if you're working to get stuff or to maintain stuff, then you might want to rethink that. Right? Because I mean, you're working, all of your energy is going to coveting and idolatry. And then you wonder why I don't have enough time to pray. I don't have enough time to take a Sabbath and study and worship on the Sabbath day. Many people, if they put aside a lot of these things that they're coveting through materialistic behaviors and carnal thoughts, they could now only work 1 job. They probably wouldn't have to work 2 jobs. If you didn't have, 10,000 this, that, or the others, maybe your electric bill would be lower. Maybe your water bill would be lower. Maybe your expenses would be lower. So you wouldn't have to, if you didn't have to have 10 new pairs of shoes and 2 new suits and 5 new handbags and the newest car and the newest this. Think about it. Think about how much of your life effort is being put toward the maintenance or the procurement of stuff, materialism. And it brings about, not only does it bring about physical clutter in our lives, but it also brings about mental clutter. right? Because you're constantly thinking about, how am I going to get more? How am I going to keep more? How am I going to, and then, my goodness, once you have all that stuff, now you've got to get, now I need an alarm system and a security system and, this and that and the other, because I'm afraid somebody's going to come and take my stuff, right? Um, the more you have, the more you want, and the more you have, the more you want to protect, right? And so it ultimately makes you discontented. It clutters your lives, and it clutters your mind, and it clutters your emotions. Not only that, it also blinds your eyes with earthly treasures. 2 Peter chapter 3, 1 through 18 speaks specifically about materialism and how it really just corrodes. And what is corrosion? Enough corrosion is going to bring about death. Right? So carnally minded associated with death. But to be spiritually minded is life and peace. There was a time in my life when I was homeless, as people might say. A lot of folks are choosing to live in vehicles and vans and so forth today. So I'm not sure that homelessness as such is perhaps the best term. But there was a time when I was, quote, homeless. And I think about that time now sometimes, and I think how happy I was. I didn't have to clean. I didn't have to worry about, security issues, a security system, right? There were a lot of things that I was free of. There were a lot of things that I was free of. You learn that that you can live. You really can live with less. You really can live with less. So it's not always important to have a lot of things and a lot of stuff and a bigger space, because then that means higher electricity bills, higher water bills, and so forth, and the like, right? So it's not always important to have that. And so with that, without those things, you can have more peace. You can have more life. You can have freedom. Just think, if you didn't have, the 5,000 square foot house, perhaps you could go out and be bicycling and walking and enjoying, nature, and having more time with your family, with your children, with your spouse. Or, my goodness, you would actually maybe have more time to spend with the Lord, to spend in the Word. Peace and life are in spiritually minded folks and with spiritually minded folks. Because, verse 7 says, because the carnal mind is enmity against God. All of those, idolatry, materialism, that goes directly against God. Why? Because of what we just said. It becomes idolatry. It becomes in place of God. And we do not want to adopt the spirit of the Antichrist. Right? For it is not for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. Carnal mindedness cannot be subject to the law of God. Why? Because if it were, then you wouldn't do it. Kind of like what we were talking about a couple of episodes ago with regards to people who are atheists. Ultimately, the atheists, after all of the scientific and all of the logic arguments are debated, the atheist lacks belief in the existence of God, or doesn't want to believe in, and I say doesn't want to because it becomes volitional. There's no more a logical argument about it. They simply don't want to. And then, that agnostic person who believes that nothing can be known, or nothing can be true, or um, there's no existence or nature of God, or anything beyond material phenomena. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. It's kind of the agnostic view. right? Nothing